Life processes. All living things are made up of cells. If we observe the cells of an organism, we can find that there is a continuous movement of molecules into the cell and out of the cell. Cells need molecules to get energy and to build new complex molecules. In the same way, cells need to send out the waste molecules that are generated during their metabolic activities. So, a continuous inward and outward movement of molecules is required for a cell to survive. Organisms like plants and animals are made up of millions of cells. Then, how do supply of new molecules to these cells and removal of waste molecules from these cells takes place? Which processes help the organisms to do this difficult job? Life processes are a set of processes that help the organisms to do this job. The processes that help the organisms to maintain and repair their bodies are called life processes. Nutrition, respiration, transportation, and excretion are the four important life processes that help the organisms in their survival. Nutrition. All living organisms need food to live, but the way by which they obtain their food is different in different animals. The way of obtaining food, digestion, and absorption of food comes under nutrition. So nutrition is the first and most important life process. Types of nutrition. 1. Autotrophic nutrition. 2. Heterotrophic nutrition. Let us see autotrophic nutrition. Autotrophic nutrition is the process by which green plants, algae, and some bacteria make their own food using simple inorganic substances like carbon dioxide and water with sunlight as the energy source. Autotrophic nutrition in plants. Plants make glucose by using simple inorganic materials like water, carbon dioxide in presence of sunlight and with the help of chlorophyll. This process is called photosynthesis. During this process, organisms also produce oxygen, which is very important for the survival of the organisms. Here we can see the chemical equation of photosynthesis. 6CO2 plus 12H2O gives rise to C6H12O6, that is glucose, plus 6O2, that is oxygen, plus 6H2O, that is water. So this reaction takes place in presence of sunlight and with the help of chlorophyll. Plants use this glucose for their energy requirements. The remaining glucose is converted into starch and stored in different parts for future use. Oxygen is released out into the atmosphere. So from this equation, we can understand that the raw materials or reactants of this reaction are carbon dioxide and water. The products are glucose and oxygen, and the conditions and apparatus required are sunlight and chlorophyll. Let us see how plants acquire their raw materials. Plants obtain carbon dioxide through tiny pores called stomata located on the surface of leaves. Leaves play a major role in exchange of gases in plants. However, gas exchange also occurs across the surface of stems, roots, and other parts of the plant. To prevent excessive water loss, plants regulate the opening and closing of stomatal pores. When carbon dioxide is not needed for photosynthesis, the plant closes these pores. This regulation is controlled by specialized cells called God cells present in the stomata. When God cells absorb water, they swell, causing the stomatal pore to open. In the same way, when they lose water, they get shrink and the pore closes. This mechanism helps the plants to efficiently manage gas exchange and water conservation. This is how plants get carbon dioxide. Let us see how do they get the other materials. Plants get water from the soil through roots. Plants get the light through the surface of the leaf. Water, carbon dioxide, chlorophyll, and sunlight. If any one of the components is missing, plants cannot carry out photosynthesis. Let us verify it with some activities. Variegated leaf experiment. By this experiment, we can prove that chlorophyll is important for photosynthesis. For this, take a potted plant with variegated leaves, such as money plant or croton plant. Place the plant in dark room for 3 days to deplete all the stored starch. After 3 days, expose the plant to sunlight for approximately 6 hours. Pluck a leaf from the plant and identify the green areas on it. Trace these green areas onto a sheet of paper. Boil the leaf in water for few minutes to soften it. Transfer the boiled leaf into a beaker filled with alcohol. Set up a water bath and place the beaker containing the leaf and alcohol into it. Heat until the alcohol begins to boil. Now, take out the leaf and submerge the leaf in a dilute solution of iodine for few minutes. Now remove the leaf from the iodine solution and rinse it off. The green areas of the leaf turns dark blue. Iodine, when reacts with starch, it produces dark blue color. That means in the green areas of leaf, photosynthesis took place due to the presence of chlorophyll. And in the non-green areas of the leaf, there is no photosynthesis due to the absence of chlorophyll. Similarly, we have another activity to show that carbon dioxide is necessary for photosynthesis. For this, select 2 healthy potted plants of similar size. Place both the plants in dark room for 3 days. Now place a watch glass containing potassium hydroxide to absorb the carbon dioxide next to one plant. Cover both the plants with separate bell jars and use Vaseline to seal the bottom to ensure an airtight setup. Expose both plants to sunlight for about 2 hours. Pluck a leaf from each plant and perform a starch test as described earlier. Now compare the presence and amount of starch in both the leaves. The plant kept with potassium hydroxide has very less starch as compared to the plant without potassium hydroxide. This shows that carbon dioxide is necessary for photosynthesis. Location and mechanism of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis takes place in the special organelles called chloroplasts present inside the green leaves. Let us find their exact location inside the leaf. This is the cross section of the leaf. Here we can observe some cells with green dot-like structures. These green dot-like structures are the chloroplasts. A chloroplast has 2 membranes, the outer membrane and the inner membrane. The inner membrane is called grana. It is folded and forms stacks of sacs-like structures called thylakoids. Chlorophyll is the green color pigment present in these thylakoids. The space between the grana and the outer membrane is called stroma. Photosynthesis is a very complex process and it involves so many reactions in it. Some reactions of photosynthesis takes place in the grana and some reactions takes place in the stroma. Mechanism of photosynthesis. Let us try to understand the mechanism of photosynthesis in 3 major steps. Step 1. The chlorophyll molecule present in the chloroplast absorbs the sunlight and gets activated. Step 2. The light-activated chlorophyll splits the water molecule. We know that water molecule is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. Now these two are separated by this light-activated chlorophyll. This reaction is called photolysis. Step 3. The hydrogen produced in step 2 reacts with carbon dioxide and forms glucose. This is how glucose is made by the plants. But do plants make only glucose in their bodies? No. Apart from glucose, plants also make proteins in their bodies. Plants need nitrogen to make new protein molecules. Plants get this nitrogen from the soil. Nitrogen is present in the soil in the form of nitrites and nitrates. But from where do these nitrites and nitrates reach the soil? The nitrogen-fixing bacteria present in the soil converts the atmospheric nitrogen into nitrites and nitrates. This is all about nutrition in plants. Now let us see the heterotrophic nutrition. Heterotrophic nutrition. Heterotrophic nutrition involves obtaining ready-made organic food by consuming other organisms. Heterotrophic organisms cannot synthesize their own food and depend on the organic matter produced by autotrophs or other heterotrophs. There are various modes of heterotrophic nutrition. 1. Holozoic nutrition, 2. Saprophytic nutrition, and 3. Parasitic nutrition. Holozoic nutrition. This type of nutrition involves the ingestion of solid organic material which is then broken down and absorbed by the organism. Most animals, including humans, exhibit holozoic nutrition. Holozoic nutrition involves ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and digestion of food. Saprophytic nutrition. Organisms that obtain their nutrients from dead and decaying organic matter are called saprophytes. They secrete enzymes onto the dead matter to break it down into simpler substances which they can absorb. Fungi and certain bacteria exhibit saprophytic nutrition. Parasitic nutrition. Parasites are organisms that live in or on other organisms and they derive their nutrients from their host. Parasitic nutrition is commonly observed in various species of plants, animals, and in microorganisms. Holozoic nutrition in single-celled organism. Amoeba. Amoeba has no fixed shape, so it takes in food from any point on its body surface. Amoeba grabs food using finger-like extensions and forms a food vacuole. Inside this vacuole, the food breaks down into simpler substances that go into the cell. Anything left undigested is pushed out of the cell. In other single-celled organisms, like in Paramecium, it has a specific shape and the food is taken at one particular spot. Tiny hair-like structures called cilia helps in moving the food to this spot for ingestion. Nutrition in human beings. Food enters our body through mouth. Our digestive system begins with mouth and ends with anus. Different parts of the digestive tract are arranged like a long coiled tube. This tube is called alimentary canal. Accessory glands like liver, pancreas, and salivary glands are attached to the alimentary canal and forms the digestive system. The food inside the mouth is made into a soft paste by the action of teeth and saliva. Saliva is a fluid that makes the food soft and wet. Saliva has an enzyme called as salivary amylase. It digests the starch partially. The food is well chewed in the mouth and it passes down into the stomach through esophagus. The rhythmic contractions of the esophagus help the downward movement of the food. These rhythmic contractions are called peristaltic movements. This is stomach. It is a hollow muscular organ. Gastric glands present in the walls of the stomach produce gastric juice. This gastric juice has different compounds in it. These compounds help the stomach to digest the food. Let us see the different components of this gastric juice. Gastric juice has pepsin, hydrochloric acid, and mucus in it. Pepsin is a protein digesting enzyme. The medium of the stomach should be acidic for the proper action of this pepsin. So, the medium of the stomach is made acidic by hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is a strong acid. It can cause damage to the stomach walls. A thick layer of mucus protects the walls of the stomach from the action of HCl. At the end of the stomach, there is a muscular sphincter called as pyloric sphincter. This sphincter releases the partly digested food slowly into the small intestine. Small intestine is the longest part of the alimentary canal. It is highly coiled to fit in less space. Pancreas secretes the pancreatic juice, intestinal glands secrete intestinal juice, and liver secretes bile juice into the small intestine. Pancreatic juice and intestinal juice have enzymes like trypsin, lipase, pancreatic amylase, peptidases, and nucleases. These enzymes help in the digestion of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. The bile juice that comes from liver does two important jobs. 1. Emulsification of fats means converting the bigger fat droplets into smaller fat droplets. By doing this, the surface area of the fat droplets increases. Due to the increased surface area, enzymes can digest these fat droplets more efficiently. The second job of bile is to make the intestinal pH alkaline. In the small intestine, alkaline medium is required for the digestion of carbohydrates. The digestion of food gets completed in the small intestine. In the complete process of digestion, carbohydrates are converted to sugars, proteins are converted to amino acids, fats are converted to fatty acid and glycerol. Absorption of nutrients. The nutrients that are formed in the process of digestion are absorbed into the blood circulatory system. The absorption of nutrients takes place in the small intestine. The wall of this small intestine has numerous finger-like projections on its inner surface. These finger-like projections are called villi. Blood vessels and lymph vessels are present inside these villi. Nutrients get absorbed into these vessels and enters the bloodstream. Undigested food enters into the large intestine. The water present in this undigested food is absorbed into the blood. The remaining undigested waste is excreted out through anus. This is all about nutrition. Respiration. Respiration is a kind of chemical reaction that takes place inside the cells to release energy from nutrients like glucose. Aerobic respiration. In some organisms, oxygen is needed for the process of respiration. This kind of respiration is called aerobic respiration. So the respiration that takes place in the presence of the oxygen is called aerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration, one glucose molecule splits into two pyruvic acid molecules. This step takes place in the cytoplasm of the cell. Now, these pyruvic acid molecules enter the mitochondria. Inside the mitochondria, these pyruvic acid molecules turn into water and carbon dioxide. In this step, energy is released. The energy released during the process of respiration is used to make ATP molecules. ATP means adenosine triphosphate. Let's see how an ATP molecule is made. This is adenosine diphosphate. That means it is ADP. It has two phosphates in its chain. And this is an inorganic phosphate. The energy released during respiration reaction is utilized here to join the inorganic phosphate to ADP and forms the ATP. It has three phosphates. That means the energy derived from the respiration is stored in the chemical bond of terminal phosphate of ATP. When the terminal phosphate linkage in ATP is broken using water, the energy equivalent to 30.5 kilojoules per mole is released. This ATP molecule serves as the primary source of energy for various cellular activities. ATP can be used in the cells for the contraction of muscles, protein synthesis, conduction of nerve impulses, and for many other activities. For this reason, the ATPs are called as cell currency. Anaerobic respiration. In some organisms, oxygen is not needed for respiration. This type of respiration is called anaerobic respiration. In anaerobic respiration, less ATP are released compared to aerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration is observed in organisms like in bacteria and in yeast. Sometimes, even in our bodies, anaerobic respiration takes place. While doing vigorous exercise, the oxygen levels decrease in our muscle cells. This leads to oxygen deprivation and leads to anaerobic respiration. In anaerobic respiration, pyruvic acid molecules turns into lactic acid by releasing energy. The build of this lactic acid in the muscle tissue due to anaerobic respiration leads to muscle soreness or muscle pain. Alcoholic fermentation. In organisms like yeast, during anaerobic respiration, pyruvic acid molecules are converted into ethanol and carbon dioxide. This process is called as alcoholic fermentation. We can observe alcoholic fermentation with the help of an activity. Take some fruit juice or sugar solution and add some yeast to it. Take this mixture in a test tube fitted with one whole cork. Fit the cork with a bent glass tube. Dip the free end of the glass tube into a test tube containing freshly prepared lime water. Fermentation takes place and the carbon dioxide gas is produced. It turns the lime water milky. Aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration, and alcoholic fermentation. Among these three processes, the energy that is released in aerobic respiration is higher. But for the process of aerobic respiration, a continuous supply of oxygen is needed. Then how do aerobic organisms get the continuous supply of oxygen? It is done by breathing. Breathing. Plants have small pores on their leaves called stomata for the exchange of gases. Animals need special respiratory organs for the exchange of gases. We know that animals live on both land and in water. Terrestrial animals breathe the oxygen present in the air. Aquatic animals get the dissolved oxygen present in the water. Aquatic organisms have a faster breathing rate compared to terrestrial organisms because the amount of dissolved oxygen in water is relatively low. Fishes, for example, draw water into their mouths and then push it over their gills. Here the blood absorbs the dissolved oxygen from the water. Then how do terrestrial animals like humans get the oxygen? Let us see. Human respiratory system, structure and function. Human respiratory system is well designed to breathe oxygen from the atmosphere. Human respiratory system begins with a pair of nostrils. Air enters the nose through these nostrils. Thin hairs present in the nasal passage filters the dust particles that we breathe in. The nasal cavity is lined by mucus and it makes the air moist and humid. Now, this moist air enters the windpipe. Windpipe is also called as trachea. It is supported by C-shaped cartilaginous rings. These rings support the trachea and helps to keep it open position all the time. Windpipe divides into two branches. These branches are called bronchi. They are further divided into fine branches called bronchioles. Finally, these bronchioles are attached to small balloon-like structures. These balloon-like structures are called alveoli. Exchange of gases. The wall of the alveoli is only one cell thick, and it has a network of blood capillaries. Here, the exchange of gases takes place between the blood and alveoli. The blood that comes from the body parts has more carbon dioxide in it. The air that enters the alveoli has more oxygen in it. Due to this difference of concentration, the exchange of gases takes place between the blood and the alveoli. The oxygen that is collected into the blood is transported by a pigment called as hemoglobin, which is present in the RBC of blood. Carbon dioxide is transported by blood in dissolved state. Transportation. Now, let us look at the human transport system. Transportation is an important life process. Our transport system is composed of 1. Blood to transport different materials, 2. Heart to pump the blood, and 3. Blood vessels to supply the blood to different body parts, and 4. Blood platelets to repair the damaged blood vessels. Blood acts as a transporter of food, oxygen, and waste materials within our bodies. Blood is a type of fluid connective tissue. It is composed of plasma and blood cells. Plasma carries nutrients, carbon dioxide, salts, and nitrogenous wastes in dissolved form, whereas oxygen is transported by red blood cells. The pumping organ that we have in our body is heart. Just like how an electric motor pumps water in the pipes, heart pumps the blood into the blood vessels. Our heart is a muscular organ. It is in the size of our fist. Heart does two important jobs. The first job is to collect deoxygenated blood from the different parts of the body and send it to the lungs for oxygenation. This task is done by the right side chambers of the heart. The second job is to collect the oxygenated blood from the lungs and supply it to the different parts of the body. This task is done by the left side chambers of the heart. But these two tasks are performed at the same time. At first, left atrium and right atrium gets relaxed or dilated. Then left atrium gets the oxygenated blood from the lungs. Right atrium gets the deoxygenated blood from the body parts. Now both these chambers get contracted and pump the blood into the bottom chambers. Now the left ventricle gets contracted and sends the oxygenated blood to the body parts. At the same time, right ventricle pumps the deoxygenated blood to lungs. Ventricles possesses thicker muscular walls compared to atria because they need to pump blood to various organs. Valves prevent the backward flow of blood during the contraction of atria or ventricles. Heart structure in animals with different energy needs. Birds and mammals have a 4-chambered heart with complete separation between the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. The separation of these right and left sides of the heart prevents oxygenated and deoxygenated blood from mixing. If the mixed blood is supplied to the body, the amount of oxygen supply decreases and the energy production also decreases. This separation allows for efficient oxygen delivery to meet their high energy demands. Amphibians and reptiles. They have 3-chambered hearts, allowing some mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Fishes. They have 2-chambered hearts. Blood is pumped to the gills for oxygenation and then directly to the rest of the body. This type of circulation is called single circuit circulation because in a complete cycle of circulation, the blood flows through the heart only once. Double circuit circulation. In mammals, the blood travels through the heart twice in one complete cycle of blood circulation. One time between heart and lungs and the second time between heart and body parts. So this type of circulation is called double circuit circulation or double circulation. Now we will study about the blood and blood vessels. In our bodies, we have 3 different types of blood vessels named as arteries, veins and capillaries. Arteries carry the oxygenated blood from heart to different parts of the body. Heart pumps the blood into arteries with great pressure. So arteries have thick and elastic walls to resist this blood pressure. Veins collect the deoxygenated blood from body parts and carry it to the heart. Veins do not have thick walls since the pressure of blood is low in veins. But veins have valves in them. Due to these valves, the flow of blood takes place only in one direction. To supply the materials to cells, arteries split into thin fine tubules called capillaries. The other ends of these capillaries join together again to form the veins. Blood pressure. Blood pressure refers to the force exerted by blood against the walls of blood vessels. Arteries typically experience high blood pressure compared to veins. Systolic pressure denotes the pressure in arteries during ventricular contraction, while diastolic pressure indicates the pressure during ventricular relaxation. Normal blood pressure is around 120 mmHg systolic and 80 mmHg diastolic. A sphygmomanometer is used to measure blood pressure. Any obstruction or blocks formed in the arteries leads to high blood pressure or hypertension. If this is not treated, it may lead to rupture of blood vessels and leads to serious problems. Repair of damaged blood vessels. If our blood vessels are cut in any accident, blood flows out through these blood vessels. This leads to 1. Loss of blood and 2. Decrease of pressure in the circulatory system. To stop the bleeding, blood platelets move to the site of leakage and plug the cut temporarily. Permanent clotting of blood takes by the help of various clotting factors present in the plasma of the blood. Here is a question for you. If the plasma contains blood clotting factors, why don't they clot the blood in the blood vessels? If you know the answer, please write it in the comments. Lymphatic system. Just like blood circulatory system, we have another system in our body called as lymphatic system. Lymph flows in this system. Lymph is a colorless fluid. The plasma, proteins and some blood cells escapes out through the small pores present in the walls of the capillaries. They gets accumulated in the intercellular spaces of different tissues. Later this fluid becomes the lymph. It is similar to the plasma of blood but colorless and contains less protein. This lymph enters the lymphatic vessels through the lymph capillaries. Finally, these lymph vessels are open into the large veins. Lymphatic system does two important jobs. The first job of lymph is to absorb the digested fats in the intestines. We can see the lymph vessels in the villi of the small intestine, where the absorption of nutrients takes place. The second task is to collect the extracellular fluid and deposits it into the bloodstream. This is all about human transport system. Now let us study the transport system in plants. Transportation in plants. Plants do not move, and plant bodies have a large proportion of dead cells in many of their tissues. Because of these reasons, plants require very less energy and have a slow transport system. In plants, the transport of food and water takes place by two different types of tissues. They are xylem and phloem. Transport of water. Xylem tissue in plants consists of interconnected vessels and tracheids found in roots, stems and leaves, forming channels for water transport. Now we will see how the water enters into the roots. The cells of the roots that come in contact with the soil actively takes the ions from the soil into them. Due to this kind of active transport of ions, the concentration difference of ions develops between soil and root cells. To balance this difference, water enters the roots. This steady inflow of water into the root xylem creates a continuous column of water pushing it upwards. However, this pressure alone may not be enough to move water up to great heights in plants. Plants use transpiration, the loss of water vapor through stomata in leaves, to pull water from the xylem in roots. Transpiration creates a suction effect, aiding in the absorption and upward movement of water and dissolved minerals from roots to leaves. Transpiration also helps in regulating plant temperature. Root pressure is more significant in water transport at night, while during the day transpiration becomes the primary driving force for water movement in the xylem. Transport of food and other substances. The food that is prepared in the leaves of the plants during photosynthesis has to be supplied to different parts of the plants. This process is called translocation. The translocation of food materials like glucose takes place through phloem tissue in plants. This translocation takes place in both upwards and in downwards direction. Energy is required for the process of translocation. Cells get this energy from ATP. At first, with the use of energy from ATP, sucrose enters the phloem tissue. Then the osmotic pressure inside the phloem tissue increases. Now, due to this osmotic pressure, water enters the phloem tissues. Now with this pressure, food materials are taken to different tissues of the plant. Phloem transports the food as per the requirements of the plants. For example, in spring season, buds need more food material for flowering. Then the phloem supplies the food from stem or root. Excretion. In the bodies of living things, metabolic activities produce nitrogenous waste materials. These waste materials must be eliminated from the bodies of the organisms. This elimination process is known as excretion. Unicellular organisms release these wastes through simple diffusion from their body surface into the surrounding water. Whereas complex multicellular organisms, they have specialized organs to carry out excretion. Excretion in human beings. Cells, while carrying out their metabolic activities, they produce toxic nitrogenous substances like ammonia, urea and uric acid. These compounds are to be eliminated from our body. Humans have a well-developed excretory system to dispose these wastes. Blood collects these toxic materials from the cells and carries them to the excretory system for filtration. Human excretory system has 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 urinary bladder and 1 urethra. Kidneys have tiny filtering units called as nephrons. Nephrons are the structural and functional units of the kidney. They filter the wastes from the blood. Each nephron has a tuft of capillaries called as glomerulus and a cup-like structure called Bowman's capsule. Nephrons filter the blood and removes the wastes like urea, uric acid and creatinine. Useful materials like glucose, amino acids and salts also get filtered into the Bowman's capsule, but later they get reabsorbed back into the blood circulatory system. Filtered wastes along with water is called as urine. It enters the urinary bladder through ureters. Once the bladder is full, it triggers the sensation of urination. When we relaxes the muscles of our urinary bladder, then the urine flows out through the urethra. Excretion in plants. Plants have different ways of getting rid of waste compared to animals. During photosynthesis, plants produce oxygen, which can be considered as a waste product. It is released out through stomata. Plants get rid of excess water through stomata by a process called transpiration. Some waste products are stored in dead cells and in old leaves. By shedding these leaves, they get rid of the wastes. Some plants excrete waste substances into the soil, which in turn increases the soil fertility. Plants also store certain wastes in cellular vacuoles. Certain plants excrete waste materials in the form of resins and gums as a means of defense, protection and waste management. This is all about the chapter Life Processes. Thanks for watching.